Hello, hello.
You might take a look at who else is here if you would like on the other pages, saying hello. Hello, hello. Uh, oh, so good. Mudita,
No.
equanimity.
No more mudita. Yeah, well, welcome everyone. As most of you probably know, and some of you very involved, this is the kind of final full sitting for the weekend retreat of the Upekkha equanimity practice, which is actually the final weekend of our 4 weekends of the Brahma viharas that we've done through the month. Um, and so we are feeling really good about our time together and all of the different ways the community has been able to come together and practice and sit together, and some sitting more intensively, some sitting less intensively, and these sort of different wavelengths and frequencies of good intention coinciding at various points. And so this is our last point of that for this period of practice. And because it's equanimity, we're not exactly going out with a bang, but
Well,
a hush.
with the most strength.
Right.
Most
With
strength.
very quiet determination.
Yeah.
Mm. So yeah, so welcome to everyone. And yeah, let's sit together for a little while. So as usual, taking your time to find your way into a settled seated posture, letting the eyes close as a way to just help incline the mental, emotional posture more inward, more sensitive, less externally directed. And even in that action, just noticing if there's any sense of relief or ease that might come from letting go of this external orientation, sometimes the strain and pressure we feel to attend to everything around us. Sometimes this relief of letting that go for a little while and attending to the realities we experience directly, not disconnected from that world, but sometimes less conceptually engrossed. And of course, there can be trepidation about entering these inner realms. knowing that they are not under our control. There are experiences in the heart, mind, body we do not know well. That lack of familiarity can be intimidating. And so it can be helpful to notice if there is any compassion, caring we have for the mind, heart, recognizing its vulnerability, the many ways it seeks security, through ignoring or directing the attention elsewhere, grasping to external objects, rejecting. So compassion for the mind, that may dread a deeper sense of insecurity, and noticing if any of this caring, sense of accompaniment might feel reassuring, stabilizing, supportive. As we begin to just simply recognize the various streams of experience that are unfolding in the present moment, sometimes it really simply feels like a flood, an overwhelming stream of experience. Hard to see, hard to keep track of, hard to relate to. And so, this tool of discernment, of recognizing them as different sense streams, is one way we start to develop this capacity to be in healthier relationship. So we recognize that even though the eyes are closed, that seeing is still happening. This visual stream of light, darkness, color, shape, arising and passing out of our control. Smells and tastes often are more subtle while we're seated, but we know they can be very powerful, evocative. There's a stream of sound as vibrations in the air make contact with the eardrum. Huge range just at this one sense door. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral sounds coming and going. The mind interpreting and conjuring a world around us based on these sounds, but distinct from the sound. Interpreting, imagining, wondering, liking, not liking. This stream of mind, images, thoughts, wonderings, worryings, loving, hating, concentrated, sleepy. And of course, the stream of the body, pressure, tension, hardness, softness, moisture, dryness, coolness, warmth, motion, pressure, all arising and passing, coming and going, regardless of our preference. We sit in the confluence of these six streams, constant movement, unceasing, unfolding, mysterious. There is a way that we recognize where this all comes from, because we observe it unfolding. We observe this powerful process of integration, interpretation, and action, reaction that we set in motion from this point forward. So we can recognize that all sounds, all visual impression, physical sensations, activity of the heart and mind is conditioned by previous moments, previous action, previous impulse. We can, of course, follow the thread of our own actions. This day, this time of our lives, far back, we see that some of what we encounter right now is the result of our own action, our own creation, maturation. We have inherited the results, good and bad, dependent in part on what motivated those actions. Of course, we are the inheritors of the actions of others. Our family, our friends, our communities, people we pass by. The smallest interactions, those have influenced us, conditioned our lives, whether those actions are based on loving kindness, generosity, honesty, care, anger, greed, ignorance. And an unfathomable quantity of beings and actions beyond our comprehension have acted and influenced our lives. Impossible to precisely follow the thread. The world around us, our bodies, our hearts, our minds, the physical conditions of what we are sitting on, where we are sitting, sound, physical sensation, is the result of past action, flooding into this present moment. And the heart can sometimes barely stand it. The overwhelm, confusion. And yet we don't need to be able to parse each thread to know the story of each sensation, to recognize that each moment of this fruition is worthy of our care, fleeting, impermanent, undependable, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The heart can care for whatever is unfolding. We recognize the pain and the history of pain can be met with compassion, experience of beauty, the lineage of joy, and feel that goodness and honor it. And we recognize that all of this flood resulting from actions far beyond our control. Apparent now, and that this is where our responsibility begins. And it is total. And that the heart has this capacity to care. And to be serene, to take responsibility from this point forward for what we perpetuate. This incredible capacity of the heart for calm, confidence, and the security of equanimity in the face of this flood is unlimited. that we can bear. These momentary arisings and passing. We can care about them. Their painful or beautiful nature. And there is a stability of mind, spacious, sober, accepting, relieved by the truth, clarity, unconfused and quiet. And the strength and purity of this quality of mind is beautifully nourishing, letting phenomena arise and pass away on their own. We do not perpetuate. We choose with care. Our relationship, our actions, internal and external, can feel the freedom and ease, this quietude. Purified and strengthened by moments of care. Mm. Before we go into a little kind of question and answer period, I wanted to just offer a few thoughts of regarding equanimity in our Brahma Vihara practice. I think often when we move into the practice of equanimity as a Brahma Vihara in particular, where we're really trying to cultivate it in regard to all formations, that we experience. Um, there, we often encounter the um, internally and externally, that the kind of resistance in the form of, how can we be equanimous given things, right? Given how things are, and I'll just say in the world, um, and that this feels like indifference, and it feels like not caring. It feels detached and part of like a kind of unhealthy relationship with the suffering in our world, the structures of it, and our responsibility for being in the world in a way that's attending to those things, whatever level. And so I just want to say that complication and complexity and paradox is like a good, fruitful paradox and tension and place of like learning and working. Um, and a couple things that I would say about it are that that kind of tends to point towards something very important about what the practice is and isn't. The idea, the confusion that equanimity means indifference, or that caring means being angry. It's like the same confusion. It's the same misunderstanding. And that is the point of the Brahma Viharas as a whole, is to help clarify the all of the things around these beautiful emotions and feelings and responses that might be legitimate and might be and certainly are experienced and real, but that it's important to distinguish them, right, from the kind of purity of these other qualities of mind. And so that caring about pain is not the same as drowning in grief, right? Or it's not the same as being filled with rage in anger in response to pain, right? Again, not to say those might not be totally understandable responses, but to not call those compassion is important because they're not. And the same as distinguishing indifference from equanimity, right? Which is to say, this fathoming of the incredible responsibility we have around action, and that action has consequences. And the motivational force behind, the volitional force behind action has consequences that help determine the results of those actions in very powerful ways. And that while we cannot control all that has happened to the past befalling us right now, that we have total responsibility about what we move forward actually, right, from this moment on. That is the part of the sort of essence of the Vipassana practice and of the Brahma Viharas. And that requires the equanimity practice, right, to clarify that if we didn't have that clarity, then we wouldn't be able to have the deepening understanding of what metta actually is and what karuna actually is and mudita actually is. And similarly on the other end, right? To be able to distinguish equanimity from indifference requires that recollection that there's still caring is still there, right? There's still a connection. And so this this quote that I want to read, which um, is from the Hagakure, which is the samurai training manual, which I always make sure is clear. I've never actually read, but I did see a very good movie called Ghost Dog by Jim Jarmusch, where many of these little bits are recited in the movie. It's called it's a rainstorm. There is something to be learned from a rainstorm. When meeting with a sudden shower, you try not to get wet and run quickly along the road. By doing such things as passing under the eaves of houses, you still get wet. When you are resolved from the beginning, you will not be perplexed, though you will still get the same soaking. This understanding extends to all things. There's no list where equanimity is on its own. It's always in relationship to other beautiful mind states. And I think what is pointed out in that quote that I feel like is really important to remember is like in the 10 paramis, towards the end, you have the kind of the understanding of the relationship between resolve, determination, atidana, tidana, and equanimity, and metta, right, loving kindness. And I think that our fear that equanimity means we don't care can prevent us from what the powerful experience of equanimity is, right? Which is this unperturbability, this not squirming, not trying to go under the rooftops, right? It's like when you are determined from the beginning, you will not be perplexed. That is the essence of equanimity, is the understanding of kama, kamasaka, right? We are the owners of our actions. And so we're not perplexed about why things are the way they are. In fact, and we can care about the beautiful aspects of that and the painful aspects of it. But that lack of perplexity is what allows for the determination, right? To move forward with confidence and to move forward not because we can't bear the reality of suffering, but because we are committed to bearing the reality of the consequences of our actions and taking responsibility for it. And that somehow that greatest responsibility, sense of responsibility and acknowledgement and understanding of it also leads to the greatest ease, right? The greatest peace of mind, the greatest rest and relaxation, not more pressure, more strain, right? But the sense of like the vastness, right? The kind of the when they talk about determination, it's like a mountain or an ocean, right? This immensity, but the peace within that is very powerful, and that we shouldn't forget that aspect of equanimity, how important it is for our world and for however we choose to move forward in whatever actions we have. Um, so we do have some time for questions. Again, I think, and actually, just Karen, before we go to you, I do want to say that at first we would like to see if people who are on retreat this weekend, who have not had a chance yet to kind of ask questions about their practice and about the instruction, and about the talk and all of that stuff, that we have some time kind of to prioritize that, and then we will also check in to see if there are other folks who have questions. So I'm going to start with Kathleen. Let me see, you might not be able to unmute yet. Here we go. There you go, Kathleen.
Hi. Thank you, Jesse and Michelle and the Sangha. It's been 4 weekends of ups and downs, but a lot of great learning. My question is about the difference between practicing equanimity as a brahma vihara and practicing it as part of Vipassana. To me, it feels like the difference is the way you're practicing and the way you enter it. But for me, in both a Vipassana retreat and in the Equanimity Brahma Vihara retreat, sometimes the heart mind gets to a place where there's not even a me, there's just a stream of experience. And I can see the equanimity. And in the case of, I would say more so with the Brahma Viharas, I can also see the various Brahma Viharas coming in as needed. Like if there's an unpleasant experience, then sometimes the compassion arises. So my question is it really just a matter of how you're practicing to get to that point, and then once you're actually in a stream of experience, there isn't much of a difference? Or is there a difference that I'm missing? I don't know if that makes any sense. You can ask clarifying questions.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Michelle?
I think that some of the confusion around this, and I'm not saying that you're confused with that, but just like for everyone, that these Brahma Viharas were mainly taught as concentration practices. So that that like has colored it for so many people, so many of us, that the way that we've been offering this for some years now, but I think this year it's the clearest that um, it gets it gets harder to distinguish them at that point because um, you're you're practicing the non-doing sixth sense door awareness of Vipassana, and that's what we're offering. I think that what can be different, like you said, is the entering into it. I think that Kamasaka, the the in Vipassana, we're not in that equanimity. There is often less emphasis on being as aware of Vedana, for example. The instruction that we're giving is much more about being aware of Vedana for pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And therefore, there's much more of a chance to have a sense of kamasaka, which is the translation is ownership of action. But as even Jesse was kind of offering today, it's like that understanding that cause and effect, and that whatever is appearing is karma. And I think that that emphasis is different with the Brahma Vihara. And I think the result of that is different in that we have we have the karma of doing these weekends together, right? Or the whole month or some of it. And it's like the training and the way we're teaching this is so seamless with the Vipassana practice that you can see with more of the training, they are appearing by themselves because the karma is that we've been doing it enough that they are appearing by themselves, right? They
Yeah.
seem to be, but that actually we're creating the cause for them to come and go by themselves without doing anything, right? So
Yeah.
that I think that just kind of reinforces that sense of if we remember to be here, the more we do that, the more we remember to be here. The more, and that's mindfulness, right? The beginning moments of recollecting the attention. So if we're recollecting mindfulness of metta, recollecting the attention with loving kindness, and then we repeat that a lot, it's going to create the conditions for that to happen again and again. Yeah. That's what's so fascinating about it.
Yeah. And I'm really noticing it. Like I just am almost, I'm pretty much receiving the stream of experience, but I'm really noticing how the Brahma Viharas come in and then they almost create equanimity.
Right, because say anger appears, then at some point, if compassion, the care for, instead of getting caught in the object, the care arises for the anger within, right?
Yeah.
Then equanimity can follow. It's like the acceptance of the anger follows the care.
Okay.
That's what you mean, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Some,
there, I,
sometimes.
he- yeah, and I hear what you're saying. You know, I've done these retreats. This is my fifth year, and I've practiced all the other weekends. So that's creating the karma for it to show up more in the stream of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of why we practice and the karma of practice itself. Yeah. That's it's so beautiful a description.
Yeah, and it's so clear there's nothing special about me. I've just been practicing these for a long time, right? There really isn't a me in it.
Right. And that's why it's not personal, right? That
Yeah.
the even though we have full responsibility and karma actually is unfathomable, right? It's not personal because anything that we've been reacting to 5,000 years ago or 2 seconds ago, the aversion, attachment, delusion isn't personal. That's
Yeah.
what's so amazing, right? Or the metta compassion also isn't personal. Yeah.
Right.
But you're choosing that determination that Jesse's saying that you're the continuing of the practice of it is the um, determination,
Yeah.
the parami. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And it's the gift of the two of you offering these retreats for 5 years in a row. It just gives us the opportunity to practice it. And I'm deeply grateful.
Mm.
Thank you.
Jesse, did you want to add anything to that?
Maybe just this sense that it's more kind of contextual because it is amazing. Just maybe to kind of this idea that I want to just kind of like restate, Kathleen, that I think is so important of like the loving kindness, and then unpleasant things arise and you can care about them, and pleasant things arise you can care about them, and then suddenly you have this structure of care to be able to attend to full spectrum of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and that is what opens the door to the peace with that, right? To the equanimity with formations. And that there's just something, it's this idea that like the Buddha didn't, of course, like discover love and kindness or equanimity, or right, that these have long existed, and even as spiritual practices existed. But what I understand is that he was the first to put these four together as a grouping and to sort of understand and try to develop our understanding of the relationship between them. And I think that piece of it is just it's astounding, right? Of actually how profoundly we and increase with increasing depth and increasing kind of coherence are able to fathom that, and the how they amongst each other support something very, very meaningful, yeah. And it might just like also say it's like, to not worry about it too much. It's not like it's not, I think it is a valid investigation, right? And just as Michele is saying, because the more classical way of practicing these things is just to, you are the owner of your actions, your happiness and sorrow are not, your happiness is not dependent on my care for you. Anyway, it goes these things, right? Where you basically are just sort of like attuning to this quality in response to sort of a conceptual idea of a person or people or the world. And since we are trying to practice as a Brahma Vihara, but in relationship to our living and breathing sense experience, that it is more, of course, it's going to be more confusing about what the difference between the Brahma Vihara and the Vipassana side of things are, because we are putting those two things together. We feel like it's worth whatever places of confusion there might be, it's worth it because of what you're describing, essentially. Um, but there the one thing to look at for all of us is, if we're practicing, and say we're practicing more just sort of Vipassana, and there is the idea that we incline a little bit towards equanimity because we realize we're not equanimous or something, and we're going to bring it in as one of the factors of awakening or a parami. It's interesting to explore the difference between that experience that then we try to cultivate or try to bring in or evoke, call up, and equanimity that happens through insight, right? That's not um, kind of aimed for in its own, not trying to be cultivated, but that is the result of understanding. Those are related, and they can be very similar, but sometimes there is something to notice about the difference between a kind of neutral feeling, neutral relationship to experience that is because of a kind of quality of mind, and that the other one that comes from wisdom. And there are places where they can be distinguished, and it's not an unhelpful thing to explore as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yeah.
helpful.
Right. I'm trying to think of Molly. Were you on retreat this weekend? I'm sorry, I was like hard at.
She, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we will just start with Molly, and then I know
Okay.
Karen, you're up next. But the idea was you're going to have a Q&A for folks who are sitting the weekend retreat first, and then for people who were just coming for the Sunday, we can include later. I don't know, Michele. Do you have a?
No, I think we should just, I think there's
We'll just
not,
go with. Okay. Yeah.
go
There's not.
there.
Okay. So Karen, what's the
Yeah.
scoop? Oh shoot! I think you unmuted it, right. There we go.
Okay. This morning, and it's not so much about practice, although in a way it is. You were talking about, Michele, you were talking about the sounds that come through, and you
About,
you sort of surprised me because you said, and I'm quoting, harsh metallic sounds, brushing sounds, and
crush,
some
crushing.
brushing sounds, or that's what I heard.
Right.
And so, was it crushing sounds? Okay. Even though I have captions. Um, and since I've been sick, I've been having these harsh metallic sounds. And uh, uh, and I was just really surprised that you brought them up, because when I bring it up to my doctor or my naturopath, they don't know what I'm talking about. And you do. And I'm just wondering if you could, I'm not sure this is the right question to ask today, but I'm just asking if you have had experience with that, which I assume you have, and if you could just say something about it, because I try not to be afraid of them, but nobody tells me anything, and they are new.
Right. No, I could respond in two ways. And when I was in high school, I lived alone for 2 years. Um, and I don't know if that, my dad came home like once a week for a little while, but uh, it was different than most people have, to say the least. And I started hearing that kind of sound. Um,
Oops.
and it would often happen in the winter. And I would look out the window and I would um, think the neighbor was shoveling snow.
Mm.
It was that kind of sound. But he wasn't he wasn't shoveling. And I had it come and go during that time period, the most clearly. So I will say that where I lived, if I brought that up with anybody, it would have been considered um, something that would make me look not acceptable. And so I wouldn't have, the thought of even bringing that up to anybody was not possible for me. I was wise enough to know that that wasn't going to be well received, but it scared me. It did, because it was so different, and I think that sometimes some people have different things happen and some people don't. I mean, basically, we have construction going on right near us. And so those sounds are happening a lot. Yeah. So sometimes those sounds are actually a very loud. The crushing sound is actually these huge machines crushing rocks. So that's a very easy. I can look out the window and I can see it. But I'm giving you an example of both because, one of the gifts of this practice, and I really mean this so sincerely, because some people can have on the spectrum of like different than most. It's just sound. It's just hearing.
Mm.
The Buddha would just say, just notice hearing. It doesn't matter if it's inside and out. And that's why when we shift from the anchoring with hearing, learning how to anchor or be mindful of hearing, or anchoring with the hands and breath and body sensations, how to do that. It's the same process of shifting out a conceptual level of reality and noticing textures and vibrations, and not necessarily well, wait, at times the understanding that there's no inside or outside will appear. um, Subject object disappears. um, and even then, on a deeper level, it doesn't matter what's causing the sound. You see, on that perspective, the way when I was in the hospital, one of the nurses came in and she was like, I hope it isn't, too many noises or sounds for you. And I burst out laughing because it's like, well, this is what I do, just like notice hearing it, it's very different than being home, but the silence is really a texture, right? So the freedom is in having the choice to just notice it as sound. that's what we're doing. I mean, when we know, that's the whole teaching. We might have a thought, oh, that's a car. Or we might have a thought, I don't know what that is. That's scaring me. Or blah, blah, that's a bumblebee near my ear, whatever it is. It's like we're shifting from the concepts about what's causing the sound to just not going through the thought process and receiving the textures and vibrations directly. So hopefully for you, that's liberating, because it really, there could be a reason for it technically, but I would tend to go to a really good hearing aid person who would probably know more than most. They hear all kinds of stuff about what we're hearing. And they test for all kinds of, high, low. Obviously, I've been through this, it's like, and it changes in a lifetime what we're hearing and what. So it's not that you wouldn't necessarily get it checked out if it's bothering you. To me, if it was like tinnitus, if it's happening a lot, it's really good to get it checked out. And Jesse, you might say something about that too. But
Yeah,
I guess I wanted to just reassure you that I went for a pretty long period of hearing something that I knew was not something I would tell people about, but I just started getting used to it, and it stopped scaring me because nothing happened. Like it was just another sound.
My doctor said, "Well, take your blood pressure." And I thought, I'd be taking my blood pressure all the time. I mean, I have it in and out a lot in the morning, but also during the day. And I mostly, I'm not that afraid of it. And mostly it's just a weird sound.
Right. Right. And I think that's really important, because honestly, as I'm getting older, all kinds of weird things are happening. They inside my body and out. It's like, what is this? Like it's almost like every day it's like a new something, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would relate to it if it's not bothering you anymore or much, just the practice is really relating to it as a sound. Any old.
I was just delighted that you brought it up because I thought, oh my God, somebody else has this because, or has had it or knows, has had
Oh,
this experience. And
when
that
I was in high school,
comforts me right there.
it was very loud. It was very loud.
Yeah.
Whoa, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that was helpful. That's great. Jesse,
I
you
mean,
have,
I'll quickly say that I know, because I have tinnitus, and it's the kind that they don't know what to do about it. But there's different like it is an interesting thing where there is some which sounds a little maybe more like actually what it's like it has often it's more swooshing and just kind of scraping sound that often is you're actually hearing your own heartbeat. You're hearing actually the blood kind of moving, and there often are things they can do about that. There's other kinds that are actually about like kind of physically happening, and there's other kinds that are neurological. Anyway, it's who knows, but it's worth getting looked at. It's worth checking it out. But I think most importantly, like Michelle's saying, it's like another good example when you're meditating is like seeing, right? Like I say, right, the eyes are closed and there's still light, shape, color, right? But then there are things that happen that seem to be visual when we're meditating that aren't necessarily clear it has to do with the eyes, right? Or is it something in the mind? And um, there's something valuable about the sort of kind of interest in that and discerning it. And there's other times where it's like, whatever, you just know it's seeing and you go to the next thing because it's not really that important. And so I think kind of what Michelle is saying ultimately is like, oh, unless it's
Maybe
if
I'm
we
trying
know
to,
that it doesn't signify some signal that we're getting isn't like we're in danger or whatever, then it's like, okay, you note it and, yeah, keep going. But it
maybe
is
I'm trying to
interesting
sweep out my mind.
what's that?
I said, maybe I'm trying to sweep out my mind.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's sat long enough, it's like your own inner voice can sound weird, right? Or change. Things get weird for sure at times, and so it's definitely one of those. It's one of those interesting things. Is this like when you first started, I could hear your cat. I said, "Oh, it's just your cat." I think, Karen, don't worry about it. But I don't think that's probably what you're hearing.
No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Good luck with it, Molly.
So I have had off and on, stronger and less stronger, some a particular difficult feeling, and which is anger, and then it felt like it resolved this particular anger, but that was also connected to some conditions. So I was wondering if you two could talk about purification and how that fits in, because I often hear through the years, I've heard people talk about purification and connection with the Brahma Viharas. And and I've sort of pictured it that the Brahma Viharas are kind of like an astringent, that they bring up the opposite of what you're cultivating. So I don't know.
Very important. Do you want to start, Michelle? Or me too?
I can if you want to. I think I would say they're meant to bring stuff up. Yeah, they're just it's the design, and if we're honest with ourselves, when we're in a good place, we can see that we actually want it to be purifying, right? But say you looked at say loving kindness, and then anger, right, is said to be the far enemy, the opposite, right? It's what we can forget when we do any of these practices is that the purification means that we have more work to do in getting a relationship to the anger, right? So that if somebody has no relationship to anger and they do the metta and the anger comes up, they're gonna freak out. Like it's like there's no sense of going, oh boy, anger, I'm hoping to get a better relationship with anger. I need this work, right? It's like there's no context for it. And so that's what it's like for all of us, though. It's like the equanimity will tend to bring up the reactive mind more than anything. I used to have a joke in my head that it's good to, if you're a teacher, you have to wear a bulletproof vest when you teach equanimity practice, because it's like, woo, it's just like, it tends to be like a roto-rooter. It's just, but they are all like roto-rooters. They just tend to, it's almost like because when we're on a roll when we're deeply experiencing it, it catches us off guard. Vipassana, when you're in the pure Vipassana, even though it's bittersweet when it shifts, it's like at some point you're like, oh yeah, okay, right? But these practices tend to be a little bit more like, oh, what I didn't want this. I want loving kindness, right?
But so I guess part of what I'm thinking and wondering about is purification makes it sound like, okay, you got purified.
Well,
Right.
it's a purification of view.
But it's not a permanent.
Purification of view, meaning your view of what's happening is starting to, that what I'm saying is that purification is the purification of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And that is what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? But isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is. It is. It was kind of like an old friend with much more understanding.
Well,
There you go.
that's what's required. The wisdom, that's what we say, loving kindness is infused with wisdom or, compassion. That's what you just experienced, which is that the understanding had to come to be able to get the relationship with the anger.
Mm-hmm.
It's and in the traditional way, it's called breaking down the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
That which is quite a beautiful description.
Yeah.
You break down the barrier between yourself and the object of the anger.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can picture all different kinds of barriers. Yeah.
Right, right. And then we tend to want to use a battering ram.
Yeah. It takes years. Thank
Yeah. Jesse, do you want to say more about
Yeah, I think this isn't 100% formula, but often anger is a result of an experience of something we care about being harmed or threatened, and an inability to um, actually the inability to have the relationship with the sense of powerlessness in regard to that. So,
you.
it's what often where we can say like, well, anger's bad and anger's wrong and anger's afflictive and anger causes problems. It's like, well, not only do we need a relationship with the anger itself, right? Or that part of the understanding of the relationship with anger is to understand it and to understand what function it's serving, right? Because it is, and often it'll make you feel kind of strong. There's a strength in it, even if there's ultimately unpleasantness, and the acting out of it, of course, can lead to all kinds of, mayhem. But it's interesting, and it's sort of like, well, what is it about the heart mind that feels like it needs this to feel strong, and why doesn't it feel? And it's like you kind of just trace it back, not just intellectually, but like experientially, right? And often you can get to a place of seeing that like there's a threat, there's a harm, there's something we care about is threatened or harmed, and there's an insecurity in that, and of course you can object of blame and et cetera, and it's not to say again that the conceptual piece isn't. It's not to say that it's not true, but it's like what is how do we also develop a relationship with the vulnerability and the sense of powerlessness,
Mm-hmm.
because that may or may not be true in whatever context, right? um, and that there may be ways of engaging and interacting and that um, find power like in a different way, um, or there is something that is just the pain of something that is out of our control that is hard to bear, and it is part of how the equanimity. So you get both of these things of like the pain of not being in control and the caring, and that these two things are hard to bear, and it's part of where the equanimity, again, it's like when we talk about the purification process, it's like that's part of the way that the equanimity is what purifies the caring, and the way, of course, then the caring also purifies the equanimity. But the sense of there might be places where we all get closer to the pain of the insecurity, pain of the mm, sense of powerlessness, or the fear of the powerlessness, or the anxiety around the powerlessness, right? That there's sort of like the building blocks of what ends up getting to anger are things we have more relationship with. So then The anger itself is less of a problem because we have a relationship with it. We understand how something like that forms and gets constructed. And then we have tools around equanimity, compassion, caring, just to deal just even with the internal process, never mind with, however we might deal with the kind of situation. But it's important too for compassion or looking at the world to be like, wow, the people acting most out of anger might be those who have the least relationship with their own sense of powerlessness and their anxiety around that, right? And that does put a little bit of a different spin on, how we interpret um, the actions of others.
And understanding, bringing understanding.
Right.
Right. And not condoning, but understanding. Right.
Yeah.
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 But it's hard. What you're describing, it's like, that's food. When you really feel it. I always like to have the little Darth Vader voice in my head, like,
What'd you
feel
say?
your anger. Darth Vader from Star Wars, where he says, feel your anger, Luke.
I'm
You
a
have to
Star
like,
Ramus.
all right. So excellent. There we go. Just have your own little inner Darth Vader. Just
That
reminding you to feel your anger. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was hoping.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm.
Before Lonnie, Catherine, did you have a question?
Yeah.
I
Great.
did. I put my hand down just because of time. I didn't know if you wanted to pause or.
Go for it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And thanks to Lonnie or Lanny who has their hand up too. I wanted to ask about two things that you sort of said would happen and happened, and I just wanted to ask a little more. One is you said in the guidance tonight, actually, Jesse, like you mentioned people from our lives, and that was a big piece of what has been happening this weekend is just this like one after another, just people who I've known when I was young, interacted with deeply or not, just like coming to mind and like as if they're right there and one after the other. And I sort of didn't try to stop it, just sort of tried to be with like, okay, I guess this is what's happening and tried not to get too caught in the story about whatever the past was. But I was curious, it struck me when you said it in that was very much happening and then also kind of happened a little bit with thinking about my cat who died and did I do right by him and years ago, and so sort of that was a little more imbued, but like kind of and then the other was when you mentioned sometimes the mind is just going to want preference, and I noticed that, and I was really glad you had mentioned it because I was sort of like, wow, here's my mind like, no, don't want equanimity. We're going to think about, how to rearrange this room and what's going to look really nice. And it's like, this is so ridiculous. And I'd be watching it, and it's like, nope, this is what we're doing. This is what we are doing. And I just wanted to ask about both. And my guess is if I was sitting for more days after this, some of that would kind of it would lead, I don't know, but I just was really curious, um, particularly
Yeah.
about the first, because I can definitely be someone who gets hooked in like I didn't do that right or well, or I may have hurt someone, and like that kind of ownership of action that can be very tight and
Mm-hmm,
not,
mm-hmm.
um, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think I can start, Michelle. They're, of course, it's interesting to have sort of consider them into relationship to each other, these sort of different examples. Um, I mean, yeah, I basically, taking aside the part you just mentioned about the kind of complexity of so many relationships in the sense of doubting ourselves or remorse or things like that we can kind of get hooked in. That the idea in some what you first kind of presented of just these people just show up, right? Or these interactions, and um, I think there's something very pure and amazing about that when that happens or when we kind of notice that, because I take it essentially as, the basically what I was sort of offering today was that how much we're formed by all of these moments, and some relationships are many, many moments, and there's a huge range, and they're, you know, loaded and complex, and other ones are, or certain moments are very whatever, there's just it's simple, but it still has its impact, and it's all in there, and um, I think there's something just amazing about that, and I don't think there's definitely nothing wrong with it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of letting it rip a little bit and just having it, be part. Sometimes that is just, I am not someone who has an experience of like where people remember their past lives or something, but I think of this in that same realm, right? Or it's like, well, what is a past life? If anything that's not like this moment, and that we have bazillions of past lives from this single birth, um, and the kind of reflection on the karma of that and the kind of creative forces that have sort of produced us, I think is powerful. And the complexities of those things is also something to be careful about. So I think when we get what you do want to be careful about getting too involved in I harmed this person harmed me, and I didn't. This was, I mean, when we really can reflect on all the imperfections of every interaction, and you could go back. I'll say I can go back pretty far, right? It's like, so my earliest memories. Where is there embarrassment? We'll just say, right? It's like with it. There's a lot of those, and so the value of really reflecting on those is, I'd say, minimal in general. And one tool is to recognize the healthy side of remorse, not just embarrassment, I'd say, but more like if you have actually acted out of greed, hatred, and delusion, and potentially, seen the results of that in a unhealthy way. The recognition of that is a sign of progress, right? It is a sign that you are actually not that person. And it's part of the sort of breaking down of selfness, right? That is meaningful, right? And that can be a helpful tool of like, oh, yes, this action that I took and take responsibility for was unskillful and it caused harm, and that remorse, there is a healthy moment in there, right? And then there is the unhealthy moments of like over identification and of like, therefore I'm a bad person, and then you have all this other evidence you can kind of come up with, versus like, oh, actually the recognition of that is a sign that that is not actually what you would want to do again. It doesn't mean you're forever liberated perhaps from some of the patterns, but to recognize it in a particularly in a way you might not have recognized in the moment is like a sign of like, okay, you're actually not that person, and it can be very helpful. um I'm spacing out now on the other oh, the just the it, I, I think what you described as not fighting at times is right. You're like, okay, this is what's happening. Let them make this weird vacation on rearranging the house, your apartment, your room, whatever. Even if you don't understand why, you don't not what you quote unquote should be doing in the meditation. There's something really good about watching why the mind might do something, right? Why is it feeling like it needs a break? And whether you actually discover why or not, getting that this is part of how the mind is protecting itself is just like, okay, that's enough of whatever intensity, and we're just gonna shuffle the furniture around in our minds. Like that's an incredible thing the mind can do to protect itself from certain kinds of overwhelm. And you can judge it and argue against it and fight against it, but your mind might learn to actually trust you more if you just let it do it for a while, because it's not going to last forever. And you watch it and you're sort of like caring, compassionate, and equanimity, and then the mind will come back to the present moment at some point. And that's a big difference in terms of our practice, where we're not feeling like we're constantly corralling the attention, but just sort of like actually you watch it kind of come and go, move out, come back, and that you start to understand like and appreciate the rhythms of the heart mind, um, that you don't actually need to manage as much, right? That you can actually kind of let this unfolding happen in a way that's your system trusts you, you know, one of Michele's big teachings that we're all very grateful for.
Yeah. I want to just drop in two little things, which is the Buddha taught these two terms, hiri and otapa. And I always find the translations not that they could be better, but the translation is moral fear and moral dread. And there must be better translations, but I'm going to do the second one first because I think it relates to the first one as more clear. It helps the first one get more clear, but it's actually it's like a dread of not being mindful. So it's like when you practice long enough, you'll see that, okay, say we're angry and we do say something because we weren't mindful, right? Like we weren't, like that. There's a healthy way that you practice long enough, you'll have this otapa feeling of like, oh, that dread, but it's considered healthy because it's supposed to motivate us to want to be more mindful, right? And so I'm relating it to the first one, fear, not being mindful, because as Jesse is saying, I'm just reinforcing it. I'm just going to say something a little different about it is all of the harm being done inwardly and outwardly are temporary moments of identification with anger. It has to become my anger, right? It's not the truth. It's actually not the truth. It's not personal, but we take it personally. It's mine, and then we might do something that we might have regret for, right? That or whatever it caused it. But they're only for lifetimes or this lifetime, which are plenty, they're only temporary moments of identification. We have to, when we understand that, we actually get much more understanding and much more compassionate of the difficulty in being human and how to heal, right? And grow and to get that temporary moments of identification with greed, temporary moments of identification with aversion. That's all it is. And look at the mess humans make sometimes, right? But when you look back and that the regret is healthy, if as Jesse's saying, if it's based on an understanding of that oh, I fell for it, yeah, and that like that we're human, and there's the understanding that that's like the intention is to do the best we can with it and to learn and grow. Yeah. So like if I think there's often an assumption that we're born wise. right? We're born in little arahants walking around. And that if we aren't, it's gonna just take a few retreats and we're gonna like get this. It takes so much patience and forgiveness, really, and uh, that I'll just say one more thing. When we went to see the Happy Sayadaw once, and somebody asked him if he ever gets angry, and he's a really well practiced, beautiful being, and he just laughed and he said, "Yeah, I get angry when I feel misunderstood." Which is really interesting, right? I get angry when I feel misunderstood, and I'm mindful of it, and it disappears. But it was so light, right? Like it was so light. Like, yeah, I get angry when I feel misunderstood. I'm aware of it, and it disappeared. So if we've missed a few of those, and was mindful of it, and it disappeared, it takes practice. It's good. What you described is great.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Somehow, both of what you're saying is helping it clarify how my two experiences go together as well. And yeah, yeah. And thank you. That flood of the people it is amazing how many people and how many moments. Yeah. And all the actions. So thanks. Yeah, really helpful, both of you.
Thank you. So Lonnie.
First of all, I just want to say hello. I haven't seen you both in such a long time. I was really concerned about you, Michele. I read that you were in the hospital, so I wanted to make sure that I checked in, and here you are. So I'm really glad. I've just had the timing of the retreats hasn't been compatible with different things that I was doing. So I've missed you both, and it's really nice to see you. And I just have like a little quick question, metta-wise, because I know I'm going to the way I obsess about things sometimes, I'm just going to repeat this over and over again if I don't ask it. Because I'm coming in the middle of something, obviously, and maybe new ways that you're talking about the Brahma Viharas than I've heard in the past, because you're always you're very coming up with wonderful new ways of sharing the practice. So this is my question. The way that I relate to the Brahma Viharas is aside from practicing them individually to get to know them and grow them and understanding of them and etc. is bringing them into the Vipassana practice, like relating to bringing loving kindness into every moment, for example, and bringing equanimity into relating with equanimity to whatever's coming up and all of that sort of thing. If there's a moment of good fortune for someone, or myself even being happy about that, all that kind of thing. So is this still true? Such a crazy question, I know, but I mean, I'm going to be like, they're teaching a new way. I'm missing something important, so I just wanted to ask you.
You got it. That's
Okay,
the
good.
thing.
It's
Yeah.
true. Yay! I don't have to
You didn't
repeat
need to
it over and
come.
over
Yeah,
again
good to
excessively.
you didn't waste your time listening to us. Yeah.
I would have loved to have heard everything. So yeah, thank you, and hope to be back again. Yeah,
Good to see you.
you
Thank
too.
you,
You
Lonnie.
too.
Yeah.
Lots of love. Yeah.
That was really a quick question.
That was a self-answering question. We love those.
Just checking.
Yeah. We still, at least, yes, we'll see you in another couple of years. We'll check back in.
No, hopefully sooner.
You have to ask the same question though, and then
Oh, yeah.
we're on the right train. Mm. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Really wonderful to get together for the Sunday program and coming to the end of our weekend retreat. Yeah, just like Michele said, it's been really awesome, really just wonderful, and so appreciate everyone's energy and dedication and soft-heartedness, support for one another in it. I think, of course, that's the aspect of it that's so beautiful, just how much we gain from having all of us join and participate as much as we can. Means a lot.
Jesse, I just want to, people don't see how much work you do, but it's like a lot. Plus, I haven't been able to do a lot of work in the terms of cooking, cleaning, shopping, and etc. So um, Jesse's the one who's made it possible for me to be here. So thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Michele.
Yeah.
Of course, who have made it possible for all of us to be here.
I was able to do the dishes last night. I'm so tired. So, it's like really, he's been doing a lot.
And of course, I don't know if, oh yeah, Roberta is here. Roberta, since you're still here for this one, well, thank you for your endeavoring in our early morning hours this weekend, but of course through the whole month. It's been really, really helpful to everyone, and including Michele and I. So that's just really great.
And the internet worked. So that was fun.
The storm didn't seem to knock people's power out on here, which is great. So of course, the folks who are sitting through the end of the week will have their interview schedule up soon. Folks who are finishing this weekend retreat will gather in about a little less than 10 minutes for the metta chant and sit. And those of you who are leaving for the weekend, we'll see you next Sunday. Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.